Roughly $1 trillion in global trade flows through this single waterway every year. Today, Tehran effectively dictates the security of that entire corridor. Geography leaves no room for error. The tightest transit lanes hug the Iranian coastline so closely that tankers are always within reach of shore-based batteries. This proximity turned catastrophic on February 28, 2026. Following the total collapse of diplomatic talks, U.S. and Israeli forces initiated a massive, coordinated bombardment across the country. The escalation followed a push from a Washington hardline faction, including Jared Kushner, who argued that only total capitulation would solve the Iranian nuclear issue. The American strategy relied on overwhelming air superiority. The plan was to dismantle Iran's surface infrastructure so quickly that the leadership would have no choice but to surrender immediately. Yet weeks of heavy ordnance produced a result that few in the Pentagon anticipated. A heavily sanctioned nation managed to absorb that destruction and emerge with its strategic leverage fully intact. This resilience was the product of the post-Khamenei state mind, a military and political architecture designed specifically to function under the weight of a superior air power. Initial strikes focused on surface-level targets in cities like Tehran. While damage to administrative buildings was extensive, Iran's actual military command had already moved. For decades, Iran built missile cities deep underground. Protected by hundreds of feet of earth and reinforced concrete, these facilities deflect the impact of the heaviest American bunker busters. While the world watched surface fires, the core of Iran's nuclear command remained operational beneath them, waiting to re-emerge. IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi later verified the outcome, confirming that despite the intense air campaign, Iran's strategic nuclear infrastructure survived without significant damage. This outcome suggests that military power is measured by what a defender can preserve, rather than what an attacker can destroy. Once the initial bombardment failed to trigger a surrender, Iran shifted to an active defense, successfully engaging and shooting down advanced U.S. aircraft. The sight of high-tech jets plummeting toward the ground, followed by images of American pilots parachuting into Iranian territory, began to shift the narrative of the war. Losing multiple aircraft and helicopters in a single day stripped away the aura of invincibility that Washington's air superiority doctrine relied upon. The breaking point came on April 3, 2026. U.S. forces launched a ground operation south of Isfahan, entering a narrow geographic pinch point with exposed flanks. The trap was sprung. Using precise local knowledge, Iranian forces ambushed the column, halting the U.S. military's momentum. Faced with rising casualties on the ground and unexpected losses in the air, the political will in Washington began to buckle. In asymmetric conflict, you don't have to win every battle. You only have to prove that the enemy's operational cost is higher than they are willing to pay. Following the disaster at Isfahan, the U.S. commander-in-chief pivoted to a panicked escalation on April 7. He posted on Truth Social that a whole civilization will die tonight. The threat signaled that the U.S. had abandoned military objectives in favor of threatening the Iranian population itself. Iran's leadership did not blink. Instead, they launched precise strikes against petrochemical bypass routes across the Gulf, demonstrating their ability to paralyze regional energy exports at will. These strikes proved that if Iran's infrastructure was destroyed, the world's energy supply would follow. They weaponized the global economy against those threatening their survival. By that same evening, the threat of total war dissolved. Back-channel mediation via Pakistan forced the U.S. to accept an immediate ceasefire to prevent a global economic collapse. When a command structure shifts its threats from an enemy's military to their civilization, it is usually because the military targets have become unreachable. The shift to rhetorical threats marked the end of viable U.S. tactical options. By June 2026, the kinetic war was over, but the conflict continued at the diplomatic table. The final 14-point framework for peace was heavily dictated by Iranian counteroffers. Washington, having failed to achieve its military goals, was forced to accept terms that allowed Iran to retain its core strategic capabilities. The institutional fallout was severe. In the following weeks, 8 U.S. generals resigned in disgrace. This mass departure from the Pentagon marked the largest single loss of high-level leadership in decades. Iran emerged from the conflict with its missile fleet intact and its position as gatekeeper of the Strait of Hormuz more secure than ever before. Wars are not won by the volume of bombs dropped, but by the achievement of strategic goals. In 2026, a well-architected defense proved to be the ultimate weapon, rendering overwhelming force irrelevant.